it is that you're watching this. I'm going to do a little bit of a late show because we're getting off to a little bit of a late start. Make it kind of a short show this evening. Let some folks get on. I don't know how the late show works. Usually it's just me answering questions like normal, but I'm usually a little bit more cantankerous. Maybe use a little bit more colorful language than normal. Okay, Zan, what's up? Saying good evening, got the thumbs up. So, anyway, a lot of talk about EVs lately. You know, they're gaining in popularity, what with all the Taycans that sold and the e-trons and everything else. And somebody had brought up an idea for, you know, if the Viper were going to come back, how cool would it be if Dodge's Halo car was actually an EV? And it's funny because I got to thinking about it, and I had thought about that earlier on, and I really got to thinking about it when the Taycan had come out, and obviously with the e-tron, those cars have two-speed transmissions, and they actually drive like a gasoline-powered vehicle, like pure petrol hot rod. And they just happen to run mid-tens, or the e-tron runs high-tens. They're fast as shit. And so anyway, I got to thinking about that, man, that'd be really cool if the reintroduction of the Viper was this electric car. And the reason why I say that is, I mean, it kind of kills a lot of birds with one stone, right? You're looking at, well, automatic transmission, check. Lots of torque, lots of horsepower, check. Sounds kind of funny, just like the old Viper, check. Faster than hell, check. Looks sexy as hell, check. And in the coming years, you got to look at it like this. It's going to be real difficult to get more out of the internal combustion engine at this stage of the game. And you got to start being realistic with yourself. I mean, look at what Porsche has done. You know, there's not a whole lot more power coming out of internal combustion engines. They're focusing on other things. True for other manufacturers. Yeah, there's some that are going to keep making engines bigger, but at some point, you're just really not able to get more power out of these things, at least not economically. Like, this chair's eating me alive. At least not economically. So EV starts to look real attractive. Low center of gravity with all the batteries. Again, torque is just, it's just how much do you want to make? And the only real issue is, number one, how to figure out how Dodge could figure out to have at least a 2 or maybe even a 3-speed transmission. But what the fuck is that? Now that ain't somebody going out to Velocito. Sounds like the Skeeter truck. Anyway, back to it. So it would be real difficult to get the kind of acceleration, horsepower, and everything else that people are loving right now with these cars today for very much longer. And you can talk about all the hybrid bullshit that you want. The problem with hybrid, and by the way, if you're not familiar with how late shows work, things get a little bit colorful, or at least they used to. So we're going to be bringing these back every once in a while. So, there's a National Guard rolling around outside. Anyway, getting back to it, the fact of the matter is that to get much faster than where you're at now is going to require a power level, a power density that is going to be extremely difficult to get to. The torque, the horsepower, and everything else that an internal combustion engine can make is physically limited, not only by just the sheer displacement and packaging of that engine. You can talk about twin turbo V8s, ultra high boosts, and everything else. The problem is the fuel. We're getting to the point now where the fuel that you're burning simply will not support much more power than you're working with already. I'll give you a perfect example of that. Look at the Dodges. Hellcat, that tune in the stock Hellcat is already pretty hot to begin with. yeah, you can get more power out of them by adding a little bit of like just a scotch of timing here and there. But you don't even add timing. You add fuel to that thing and add some RPM to it. That's where you get all your horsepower out of a stock car. But I mean, look at the Hellcat moving that much weight. It's impressive as hell. But the Red Eye with 100 more horsepower, at least that's what you're led to believe, isn't really any faster than the Hellcat. I mean, you got the Demon with a lot of gadgets and gizmos and things to get it out of the hole, but it's running on race gas to really turn a number. I'll put Revlon on any Demon 93 octane for 93 octane, and it's going to be a close ass race. I'm not saying I'm going to win all of them, but you bet your ass I'm not going to lose all of them either. And that's the point. Stock for stock, fuel for fuel, we're basically out of options here. Now, granted, there are more efficient ways to go about doing things, primarily turbos. But the problem with turbo, number one, is going to be packaging. And number two, and probably more to the point, turboing V8s, not only is it a packaging issue, but you try putting a warranty on some of those things. I mean, if you think warrantying a supercharged engine is tough, I mean, you talk about all the nannies on a turbo engine. So I'll tell you what, my thought is, cool, since we're going to start hauling ass, and I mean really hauling ass, could you imagine a 3-speed transmission in a car that looked like the Viper, weighed whatever the Viper would weigh in EV form, with about, I don't know, 800 horsepower worth of EV power, which means probably close to 1,500 pound-feet of torque. And at about the 4-second mark, it shifts, and at about the 10-second mark. Oh, wait, you wouldn't even need it to shift at the 10-second mark. It'd be a 9-second car. So you're talking 3-second mark, 6-second mark, it shifts. Pop, pop. That thing would be scary fast. Like, it would put anything internal combustion on the trailer. And by the way, ain't got to worry about throwing a rod. Ain't got to worry about fuel quality is the whole argument. Don't have to worry about a lot of things that you have to worry about with internal combustion engine. You talk about, well, the range and all this other stuff. Look, if the Taycan can make 10 passes, 8 passes at the drag strip without even coming near needing a charge and can drive home, yeah, that's pretty good range if you ask me. So anyway, some things that I was just kind of kicking around, some things that had crossed my mind a little bit. And I know that the whole EV thing stirs up a bunch of controversy. People start trying to politicize that shit. It blows my mind because, first of all, the first city cars were electric. This is well over 100 years ago. And believe me when I tell you that if aviation could have made batteries that were power dense enough, they would have tried to put electric motors on airplanes. I mean, that's how dedicated to electricity they were over 100 years ago. And now all of a sudden it's a politics thing. Why? Because it doesn't make the grumbly sounds that you like? I'll reference you right back to the Viper. When I was talking to the guy, the marketing guy with SRT at Mecum, one of the biggest focus group freaking Family Feud X blaring thing that came out of that was the way that the car sounded to begin with. So that's why I think the Viper is perfect for it. Pipe in whatever sound you want. By the way, those electric motors sound pretty trippy too. So it's like futuristic sound, kind of a cool, rush, roar sound. And other things start to signify power too. The way the tires are trying to grip and fight for traction. Anyway, just the whir of those engines, those motors, I should say, does something for me. But the thing is that it sounds weird anyway. So why not make it really fast if it's going to sound weird? Anyway, just kind of spitballing. But it blows my mind. I mean, people are, EV, man, it's bad. I'm going, okay, if you want to go faster than what 93 octane fuel will allow for you to go in a warrantable fashion, your options are limited. Now, you can always, again, come back with the argument of hybrid technology. My only beef with hybrid technology, number one, is that it seems to be transitional. It's liminal technology. Like you're going from one thing to the next and it's a stopgap measure. I'm reminded of Exhibit A, 92 Camaro, except 96 Corvette, like the one that I had. You know, one of the things about it is that everything in that car was so awesome, but it was so transitional technology. It seemed clunky. My thought would be, if you're going to have a hybrid, have a turbine engine, a small turbine engine. It literally could be the size of a rugby ball. All right. Have that powering a generator that would have a small, 8-gallon fuel tank that you could literally put anything that is flammable in that fuel tank. Turbine engines flat out do not care. You can run diesel, turpentine, acetone, if it's flammable, whatever. Just pick a chemical that sounds burny and you can put that in there and it'll run. You can run them on Everclear, although it's a terrible waste of properly good alcohol. But you can literally run the thing on anything flammable, which makes it eco-friendly and a renewable energy source at that. Have that thing running a generator that would just keep the batteries charged, and it would just come on automatically. Batteries get to a certain level, jet engine takes off with it. I think it would be awesome. Plus, they're super cheap to make, and they don't cost anything in terms of maintenance. You just change the oil in them every once in a while, make sure the pumps are running, but there's no moving parts. They're lightweight. And again, all of this falls in lockstep with what other industries are using as a hybrid technology. Locomotives use diesel engines to power generators that make electric motors, make the thing locomote. Ships do the same thing. Any of these types of power production types that you see out there that need very high efficiency but still need range, that's how they do it. So why didn't the automotive manufacturers looking at it that way? I really can't understand why. But in my perfect world, that's what I would put together. But anyway, that's that. Had a bit of a tragedy today. Yeah, lost a very close member of the Mopar Chat Live family. My Dremel died today. I want to tell you a little bit about this Dremel. This is a Dremel 3000. I can't tell you how long I've had this thing, but I've had it an extremely long time. And, well, she died today. Valiantly, though. She was porting a 5.7 truck manifold, and she just quit. Tried resurrecting her. Switch might be bad. Armatures look okay. But I've had this thing for years and years and years and years and years. So everybody, RIP to my old Dremel. Love you, sweetheart. I'm not going to throw it away, though. I may, if I've got time, I may disassemble her and see if I can't do some exploratory surgery on her, see if I can't bring her back to life. I've had this thing, I honestly don't know how long I've had it. Over 10 years, probably longer than that. I would say, I don't know, whenever a 3000 series Dremel came out, that's when I got this thing. So anyway, had to go get a new one. I got the exact same Dremel. Still looks identical to this thing too. So anyway, you'll be sorely missed, but if I can resurrect her, I will certainly give her a shot because she certainly deserves it. But let's see. Well, and we're talking about Viper, potential, a what if scenario. Isn't it weird how what we're not talking about? I think that's really more the gorilla that's lurking behind us here, is the things that we're not talking about from Dodge. We're not talking about a new Challenger. We're not talking about a new Charger. But what I did want to bring up, it's 420, by the way, so happy that if you're into it. But interestingly enough, in less than a week, we have 426, which is Happy Hemi Day. Now, for everybody that's out there, are they going to come out with a 426? No, they're not. In fact, they already kind of did twice. You had the 426 blocks for that Dodge sold. That was for the I don't know, whatever their drag pack, the actual drag pack cars, not street legal. And then of course the Elephant, which was the aluminum 426. La-di-da, they didn't put it in a real car and they butchered the marketing up with that. So here they're going to go once again and they're going to Happy Hemi Day, everybody, even though they don't actually make a 426 Hemi in a car that you can buy and drive around on the street. I find that pretty funny. Like, that's supposed to be neat or cool, especially when that engine is so irrelevant that it doesn't even come up on anybody's radar, like in the Pro Stock series. Like, they're looking at the supercharged 345, they're looking at the supercharged 5.7 basically, and not even looking at the 426. For some reason, I get a little bit of a happy out of that. And I don't really know why. Probably because I'm still a little bit butthurt over the fact that they didn't put a 426 in the 1320. That would have been the ultimate send-off, especially when you consider just how special that car would have been to a lot of people. I say that because when the 1320 was being released, there was a rumor mill that had gone into flat-out overdrive. And it was circling around gearing, and it's going to have a 426, and the 392 they're not even going to make anymore, and y'all know what I'm talking about. It's a bunch of stupid motherfuckers that were running their mouths about shit that they didn't know about, a bunch of speculation. And so what ended up happening with all of that was, well, crickets, absolutely nothing. And a bunch of people ended up with egg on their face. And the whole time I'm going, guys, there's no way you're going to have a 426. There's not enough time, TikTok time. I mean, literally not enough time has gone by to get this engine through EPA and all of that. Anyway, I'm not trying to say that I'm Nostra Mopar or anything like that. I'm just telling you that that's what was going on at the time. And ever since then, every 426, every April 26, people sit around and will bite their nails off straight to the nubs, waiting for Dodge to come out and bless the universe with a brand new 426. Is it ever going to happen? Probably not. It would have been a very cool swan song for a car like the 1320. If they're saving it for the Viper, look, there's a lot of folks that have already died on the vine when it comes to buying another Mopar. So that leads me into this part of the chat. And by the way, I may or may not get to you because the late shows are typically just me going and going and going and going. So a little bit more colorful. Don't want to necessarily play the late show around the kids. And if I get to you, I get to you. If I don't, all apologies. But getting back to it, the 426, a lot of folks were hoping for it, but the thing is that Dodge has rested on this 426 narrative for so long, yet they haven't come up with one. But I promise you, on your Instagram feed, it'll say, Happy Hemi Day. Hey, everybody, it's 426. It's Hemi Day. That's a great thing. Wow, Mopar. Go Mopar. And it'll show a lot of cars doing long, smoky burnouts and drifting around imaginary things. Not one of them going to have a 426 in it. They're all going to be 392s. Hellcat variants, pick one. Maybe even a 5.7. But they're going to be celebrating a thing that doesn't even exist. It's like the fucking Tooth Fairy. All right? Like, how are you going to get all excited about that? Here comes the leprechaun, everybody. Everybody wants to see who got the gold. See, that's the thing. Everybody wants to hang on that, and they will keep throwing that lure out there and just popping it popping it back and forth because people keep biting on it. People get so worked up over nostalgia that 426 thing starts to mean something. It sounds a lot like when Chevrolet actually made a 427. LS7, anybody? And that thing, although granted, 505 horsepower doesn't sound like a lot today, it's still plenty, all right? Naturally aspirated stuff isn't making that kind of power. And granted, yeah, it was still a somewhat limited production run engine, albeit, you know, in the Vet and in the Camaro Z28 and Z06 for the Vet. But they made a 427, and that tugged at all the heartstrings because back then, the mindset was that was an engine that was used in SECA GT2 racing, and GT3, I think, also. Leading up to that, it would have been known as the Le Mans block by the GM guys. And back when it was, Corvette versus Viper, and the 427 Le Mans engine was the way to go. And of course, the Viper used stock production blocks. But the long and short of it is that back in the day, the heartstring that it is tugging at is for the old school muscle hot rod 427. And here's this thing that makes legit 500 horsepower. And even though it's a board and stroke small block, that sucker still is a 427. And that was in what, 2000 and a long time ago, 07? I mean, I can't even remember the exact year because it's been that long ago. I've been looking forward, not looking back for this long. And Dodge still can't come up with that. See, here's the twist. Dodge is so into their own marketing, and Dodge is so busy sniffing their own farts with this marketing thing. See, here's the thing. Stellantis, hi, B. Mason. I know I'm a little bit rough around the edges with this video, but I can assure you that if you bring me on in your marketing department, I think you would find me to be much more of an asset than any amount of money that you would spend on me would buy you elsewhere. Look me up. Check me out on Instagram. I'll be waiting. Anyway, getting back to it. Dodge is so into their own legend, okay? You keep hearing that legendary Hemi, power, tire smoke, all the names of these things. You got the Demon, you've got the Hellcat, you've got all this Challenger, Charger, everything harkens back to, something of power. Hellcat was a World War II Navy airplane, had the highest kill ratio. Wasn't the fastest, but it had the highest kill ratio of any other aircraft. Charger, Challenger, those are iconic names that have been bastardized in the past, by the way. Google it. You've got Hemi, which is just worn into your skull, but yet never is the opportunity there for a 426. Do you realize that is the money shot for Dodge? What would they do if they did drop a 426 on the masses? How would that even go down? Like, that is what people would flip out over. I mean, if nothing else, look, people don't know what the hell a 345 Hemi was back in the day, much less some people might know about a 392. Iconic racing engines back in the day in terms of displacement figures, but come on. The Gen 2 426 Hemi is the only Hemi that Dodge made that was ever really relevant to the public. On the street, I mean, yeah, you had the DeSotos and you had, I get that, whatever, but the real marketing power behind Hemi, although it did start with the Gen 1 and for very good reasons, but it really came into its own. I mean, it grew lots of hair when it had the 426. So when you look at it from that perspective, the 6.2 in the Hellcat doesn't mean anything to anybody. Everything's a 6.2. But 426, man, you can hang a lot of marketing cachet on 426 cubic inches. So I guess for me, the way I look at it is, what are you waiting on? I mean, Mopar is already, and people are just calling it Mopar again now. It's just a lifestyle marketing vehicle, right? And I don't mean vehicle in terms of car. I mean vehicle as in a way to get you into the dealership, buying more Hemi shirts, buying more Challenger Charger shirts, Ram truck things. It's you're buying into a lifestyle more with Mopar, a la the Harley Davidson marketing strategy. So when you look at it from that perspective, the 426, I mean, not having it is a huge marketing slip up. If you have that engine, then that's a whole next level of Mopar pandering that you'll get to. So anyway, that's kind of my thing with that 426. It blows my mind. Anyway, we got there from wherever I was before. So let me check in with you guys real quick. See what y'all are up to. Don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that, smash the bell. If you haven't smashed the bell, chances are if you're on here, you already did. But the bell is the thing that makes all the difference in the world, y'all. Let's see. I'll take some of you guys. Here's Marco Cole Young's in. Got the arm flex. I like it. Cleaver's saying, what up, B? What up, Cleve? Let's see. Mark's checking in. Saying it's been a while. Yeah, you picked a good one. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the late shows get a little bit weird. Eric's saying good evening. Good evening. Marco's saying he wants to put a 5.7 in his 81 GMC. Go for it. Anthony's saying good evening, B. What up, Anthony? Smoking a 5 saying howdy, fresh mace. Got the devil horns. I like it. Let's see. Smoking 05. Yeah, if the Challenger was the size of the Viper, the Challenger you could literally put a Viper inside the Challenger. Peter's saying he'd like to see the Prowler come back. Funny thing is the Prowler would have been really cool with a V8, but they put that V6 in it, and a lot of people just didn't rub them the right way. Shiv saying, Professor Mason, what's up? Got the bald guy with the shades. I like it. Got the flex. Sovereign Knight saying, hey, B, what's up? Let's see. Sam, talking about the fire rescue deal. So here's what I've also heard. Modern cars are obviously a lot harder to get people out of. I have a brother-in-law that's a EMT and a fireman. And yeah, there's a lot of structure going on with new vehicles just in general. So yeah, it's not just the EVs, it's all of them. I've heard some horror stories about some cars that are just really tough to, get people out of. Mark's saying an EV Viper sounds absolutely ferocious. Could you imagine that? I know. Sovereign saying he saw a white GTS. Yeah, that's nice. Very nice. Let's see. Kobe saying, hey, I've been seeing so many 10-speed lovers hating on the 392s and Hellcats, stating that Dodge is not fast, but they always talk about their built cars racing stock cars. I don't get it. Nobody does. Look, let me tell you something. It's not like I don't have friends that have Mustangs that are fast as shit, right? And that's the funny thing. Like, everybody wants to just kind of talk shit, but there's always some fanboy in the background that doesn't have shit, that just likes to talk shit. And that's just, it's people that have nothing that seem to be the loudest, right? So, life. But anyway, here's the funny thing. You know how many of those cars have so much more money tied up in them than what they want to admit? If you want to build, like, for example, perfect, let me just lay this out for you. What do you consider fast? What's fast? 990, 1030, 1080, 920. Pick a number. You can get there with all of these cars. Hellcat, Mustang, Camaro, Corvette, pickup truck. It doesn't matter. You can go that fast. But very few of those cars will run some of the numbers that I had mentioned. 1070, 1050, Hellcat. Mustang GT500, it'll get into the 10s, absolutely bone stock. ZL1 will eke into the 10s stock. But it's hard to start talking about cars after that that are naturally aspirated. You're not going to get there from here. I mean, yeah, you can mod the piss out of anything naturally aspirated and get it to go fast. And I've got friends that have done that too. And the funny thing about it is that the money that they've tied up in some of those cars and the headaches that they've had getting those cars to run, I don't know, a legitimate 950, all right? Like a straight up 950, 960 car. A car that will run 970s and basically all weather. You realize that that is, for a Mustang, that is axle shafts, drive shaft, full exhaust system, built transmission, oil pump gears, some form of supercharging, lots of tuning, weight reduction, drag pack. There's your garden variety mid 9-second Mustang recipe. I mean, guys, all you gotta do is paper up, baby. That's it. So it's hard for me to get worked up over it. I see plenty of guys struggling with high and mid 9-second Mustangs. I try to help them out where I can. I don't want to see anybody have a bad time. A lot of guys are lamenting the fact that they go and have tried to go any faster than like a 980, 970, 990 combination. So let them say all the shit that they want. Chances are they got nothing to back it up. They're basically jock riding one of their homeboys that's got more money than sense or a bigger credit line than he has common sense. And he's built this thing. You and about 500,000 other people. And the thing is that you see them all the time. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain quality to quantity, I suppose. But the reality is that you're not going to do it with a bunch of stock-ass parts. And I got news for you. If this whole EPA thing keeps trekking along the way that it is, well, quite honestly, modding cars might be a little bit more difficult, and how these things run stock may start to matter a little bit more. I don't ever want to see anybody not able to mod their cars, but there's also a pretty big contingency of guys that really like to keep their cars as stock as they can and just want to go out and have a good time. So you're trying to tell me that if I have a Mustang and I don't build it to run mid-9s, that I'm wasting my time even going to the drag strip? Am I sucking up some of that oxygen that you've been spending all your money to burn? See, that's the other side of it that people don't see. It's not just that Mustangs are, you got some, Mustang fan that's all whatever about Hellcats or this or whatever. I hate Camaros, they suck or whatever. My car runs 9s, man. Okay, wow, gee, wow. So nobody cares, number one. Number two, 9s are like the new, it used to be 9s were the new 12s or 10s. Now 9s are kind of the new 12s at the drag strip. There's so many 10-second cars, it's like a 13-second car back in the day, right? And there are some fairly potent factory cars out there today that make pretty good use of, well, $100,000 worth of their cost to get into the 10s or maybe even quicker. But does that even matter? Like, here's, I guess, my point. When I hear the chatter, the peanut gallery, there's always going to be some faction of tribalism that comes with this. Mopar, Dodge, Ford, Chevrolet, whatever. There's always going to be some tribalism. And the funny thing about it is a lot of these people, literally the ones that are talking all the most shit, have absolutely nothing. You go into the staging lanes and nobody in the staging lanes, usually I should say, nobody in there is talking shit. If they do, they're new to the track, they don't know any better, they're noobs, or they're trying to hustle a race. None of them get anywhere, believe me. They get laughed at. So it just doesn't really happen. And grown-ass men that are going to the drag strip to try to burn off some aggression so that they don't like start losing their shit. That's their outlet. They don't really care. They're out there just having fun, racing their friends and helping each other out. So leave that toxicity to people that thrive on it. That's why I try to help everybody. I'd rather things be positive and cool than that other nonsense. Sam seems to think that steam cars need to make a comeback. Oh, okay, that's pretty smart. Destroyer saying, smack that like button. Absolutely. Shiv saying, my M6, I'm talking about manual scat, dampener popped out of the crank pulley. What? OEM crank dampener is trash, so I upgraded and pinned the crank with the ATI. Good idea. Sorry to hear about that. Sounded like a lefty. Sovereign saying, mark the mark, an all-electric, all-wheel drive Viper. That would be sick to death. Cleaver saying, times are changing for cars. Indeed, EV or hybrid performance cars sounds great. EV Viper before an EV Charger. I'm pleasantly against charging Charger. Sexy as fuck. Here's one of the things to think about. So, God, what was I was watching a show, okay, and on this show there was a guy, and it was a skateboard platform. If you're not familiar with some of the EV platforms, some of them are more conventional, motor differential type setup. Others are what's known as a skateboard platform. They have what's known as a radial electric motor. And what a radial electric motor is it's basically each wheel has its own electric motor. Called a skateboard platform, that's kind of what it looks like, with the center section being all basically batteries. And what the guy was saying is he's like, you know, each corner of this car has roughly 150 horsepower, I think is what he said. And with that 150 horsepower was about 300 pound-feet of torque per tire. And he was saying how he can literally tune this thing with accelerometers and everything else to do whatever he wanted it to do. It was just, you know, this infinite tunability. It just blew my mind. It's something that you cannot do with an internal combustion engine. And I just thought that was absolutely amazing, the things that they're able to do with these things nowadays. So, you know, interchangeable battery packs and things like that they're working on, where you literally can just lift the thing up, drop a battery pack out, pop a battery pack in, and you're good to go. There's a lot of weird things like that they were working on early on, but this is one of the things that the guy was talking about is, you know, this is kind of the wave of the future when it comes to these types of EV platforms. I just thought it was kind of neat. So I've been keeping up with it, and I always thought it was kind of cool just because I know what kind of torque production they make. Mark saying, Sovereign, Chevy and Ford be like Dodge did. What? Could you imagine like being the first to market with a nasty fast American sports car? Like real talk, haul balls sports car, something that runs deep into the nines and has a range of who cares how far it goes. Something that can run back to back to back to back quarter miles. In much the same way that the Taycan and the e-tron can, with that type of motor technology, with, you know, the battery technology and all of that, it would be another level game changing. And look, I understand. Okay, so one of the arguments against the EV is that they are one-trick ponies, that they come to the party with this one magic trick that they can do, which is out-accelerate anything else in its class, but that they don't handle well, they don't top end at all, they fall on their face after about 120 miles an hour. It's limiting, but it's not limiting. There's a lot that goes, there's a lot of weird arguments in terms of speed and performance and range and things like that. But the thing is that's what you go to YouTube to watch. I mean, I doubt anybody's going to YouTube and going, wow, I'm going to sit through a road race. It's really not how the platform works. You'll watch it on TV. In fact, when I'm working in my office, I almost always have Mav on or something like that. And I've got motorcycle racing or swamp buggies, or I got some kind of racing going on in the background. But if I'm clipping through YouTube, I'm just looking for, you know, a bunch of tire smoke or ride along videos and, you know, dumb stuff like that, the things that I happen to like. So, could you imagine, like, put you like this, I would be racing to be first in line for an all EV Viper, provided that it wasn't $160 something thousand. If it were cost efficient, then yes, I would jump all over it. But could you imagine that thing with some of the technology that the Taycan has to offer, 2-speed, maybe even a 3-speed, give that thing some top end? Oh my God, that thing would be sick to death. What would really be, I mean, just overwhelmingly nutty as shit, is if you pop open that hood and it's like the Wraith underneath there, right? Like you got the electric motor there, you got the speed controller with the fans arcing around it with a heat sink. Obviously the batteries would be underneath, the bottom tray of the car. Have it be rear wheel drive. That's fine. I don't care. But that would be so trippy, man. I would neon that shit out. I would be that guy. Honestly, I really would. I would have like strobing lights going back and forth. I'd have that thing so tricked out, it'd be stupid as hell. Because I can. You can do that kind of stuff when you just go, oh yeah, hold on a sec. Let me go run a quick 920. Zing, and you're done with it. Okay, who's next? That's the other thing. You want to talk about shutting a lot of people up. You get out there and you're just basically sitting there eating a Snickers bar, drinking your Diet Dr. Pepper, watching everybody else freaking out about how am I going to launch it? I don't want to blow my shit up, trying to run the right race gas mix, all this other stuff. I don't care what brand electricity is in my car. I don't care about, throwing a Electron. I don't have to worry about that. I just fill her up, haul ass, go home, rinse and repeat. That's it. Now, they're not without their potential issues. I mean, yeah, I know when I was in Menlo Park, when I was living in NorCal, yeah, you'd see them on the side of the road kind of on fire. That's when Elon was out with his buddies beating the hell out of the original Tesla coupes. Yeah, you'd see them on the side of the road on fire, waiting for somebody to come fetch them, or smoking at least, if nothing else. So, the memories. But anyway, they've got that cooling thing figured out now. At least you think that it's a lot better than what it was. So, anyway, yeah, there's a lot of cool things that coming. Steven's asking, good evening, B. What mod would allow my 6.1 to compete with 392s? Just put an E-Force on it. Put a blower on it. Mark's saying, rip. Yeah, I know, man. God, this bad girl, she got me through some tough times, man. And as a matter of fact, this little girl put food on my table a few times. Still does to this day, as a matter of fact, porting manifolds. So, yeah, I'm not going to let her go out like that. I think I might be able to fix her. I couldn't stop. I've got a manifold that I've got kind of a hot rush on that I need to get finished up. And it was looking good too. I, opened everything up. The top of this thing's opened up to 85 millimeters. I mean, it's going to be a clean manifold once I get done with it. Lots of casting flash in this one though. I'm doing an extraordinary amount of cutting in this thing, and I'm having to get the preliminary cut, I'm just getting real aggressive and going in there and carving out what I want the thing to look like, because I'm not going to lie, this manifold's got inclusions, it's got casting flash. It's basically a clinic on everything that could go wrong with one of those truck manifolds. I typically see the car and the truck manifolds have more issues than the 392s. At least lately I've seen that. Anyway, getting back to it. Sovereign saying 21 gun salute. Pew, pew. Smoking a 5 saying Dremel sacrifice to the horsepower gods. That's kind of it, actually. Sam saying a steam electric hybrid. Let's see. Sovereign saying an all-wheel drive electric Viper would be game over, pretty much. I mean, Sam saying Hemi Day should be 331. No doubt about it. That's what he's referring to, is one of the original Gen 1 Hemis that it was like a mid, what was it, 56? DeSoto was the 331. It was one of the first runs of the Hemi. Very small ports, small. It didn't make by today's standard, it didn't make a lot of power, but you could make them make a lot of power. So yeah, you're exactly right. Good call, brother. Smokin said, I noticed Hoosier 2810 bias ply slicks are quite a bit cheaper than drag radials. Are there any downsides to running slicks on a 392 car? Depends on who you want to listen to. I don't like bias ply on independent rear suspension cars that weigh more than about 3,600 pounds. What happens is you've got to remember that a bias ply tire has no real lateral support to it. So what happens is you've got a suspension that is dynamic in its articulation. So because it's dynamic in its articulation and there's no real support, you can get a little bit of an inconsistent footprint out of the thing. So there's that, as opposed to being on a solid rear axle. The other part of it that can be a little bit disconcerting is going down the track at high speeds. The car will have a tendency to yaw a little bit going down the drag strip. If you've never seen this, somebody who used to love to run bias ply tires was Racer X. And he ran bias plies front and rear because they are not only less expensive, but more importantly, they're a lot lighter. So, but that car, I kid you not, that car, my Z06 and my Vipers all did this going down the drag strip. They would yaw a little bit going down the drag strip. You get used to it. But I don't let, the problem is inertia. And it's one thing if I've got 3,400 pounds at 140 miles an hour that has kind of a slight yaw to it. It's like, hey, you just kind of, you're not even, there are no corrections. You're just driving through it. And you can do that at that weight, but at 120 miles an hour, that yaw from, an extra, 800 pounds can be real off-putting. So I don't recommend them for stuff that's as heavy as these cars are. And then when you couple the weight with the independent rear suspension, it makes for a little bit of an unstable experience at the top. And you certainly don't want to mix radials and bias ply if possible. It's just not a good idea. So my suggestion, if we're talking about bias plies here now, get you a set of DBRs. I mean, they're less expensive than the Mickey Thompsons. They're a drag bracket radial, so they're still a radial, but they're much lighter than the ET Street are. And because of that, a lot of guys like them. So just, if you're thinking about going that route for our cars, for a drag-only setup, like you're going to swap them out at the track, DBR is really the only way to go. Plus, they're a lot more forgiving. So a DBR is forgiving the same way that the ET Street is forgiving, but it has, how do I put this? It has a weight advantage, or it's about the same weight as a bias ply, but it will they just deal with bad track conditions very well. Hey, thank you very much, Catalyst99. I appreciate it. Saying, hey, B, how do we send you a manifold to be ported? Also, is a $900 price tag for an Edelbrock Victor 2 justified? You would have to go through either Dr. Differential or Pikes Performance. I don't work with the general public. I only work business to business. So, but Doc Differential would be the route to go, or Pikes Performance Tunes. Dock differential can probably get those turned for you pretty quickly. Is the cost of the Edelbrock justified? Damn. No, it's not. Because the problem with the manifold is that they tried to make a one size fits all, and it does not. The 6.1 manifold is not a one size fits all, where a lot of folks would try to argue that it is. In fact, I had sent Dr. Differential an article that I had found, and it was an article where the guys were trying different intake manifolds just to see where they fell in line. And it was a 6.1, which the Edelbrock is basically a 6.1. It's got slightly larger runners, but it's a 6.1 manifold. It was the 6.1, the factory polymer intake on the 5.7 versus some carbureted thing. That carbureted thing never makes good power. It'll make good top, it doesn't matter. It's a solution if you want a carbureted Hemi, but it's not the best solution by any measure of the word best. And the factory polymer manifold actually outperformed the 6.1 on a 5.7. So it's one of those things where I haven't personally seen the Edelbrock do better on a small displacement engine. My only experience with the Edelbrock, admittedly, is with stroker combinations. And it's been guys that wanted to go with that look and that type of intake. It's arguable if it's better. You get a little bit more of an old school looking power curve with it. Meaning that it gives up power down low and you don't necessarily reclaim it up top. They make great mid-range power, but again, we're talking about stroker combinations here. And I am of the opinion that at least somewhat massaged, at least cleaned up 6.4 manifold with an 85 millimeter throttle body, with as much cleanup as you can actually do to get it to flow what that 85 would suggest that you could get out of it. But with as much cleanup as you could possibly get done with it, it's going to be close, and it's going to be a lot less expensive and a lot less complicated. So there's that. Plus, that thing's heavy if weight matters to you, and it's aluminum. The heat doesn't really matter. Some people will say, oh, it heat soaks. It's already been proven over and over again that the heat doesn't necessarily hurt power, although cooling it off and having a cooler manifold is always better, and the polymer stays cooler. So there's that. So I wouldn't say that it's a waste of money, but it is, unless you have a built 426 or a built 440. That's the route I go. And I would never even entertain one of the sniper intakes, the very short runner intake, unless I was building something specifically to spend about 7,500 RPM minimum. And I was building just a wicked pissed NA combination. It's worthless on the street. In my opinion, you're just not going to get out of that intake what you really want to get out of it. You'd have to run a lot of gear, some level of a converter for sure, if not a very aggressive gear. And you'd have to hit it with a ton of nitrous for it to really work. You could go turbo with it, I guess, but even then, you're going to be laggy as hell until that manifold gets efficient. So there's just no upside to it. So it's of the aftermarket intakes, it's the only one that I would recommend. And even in my recommendation, that recommendation is very, very limited. Hopefully that helps. Smoking, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Say it's hard to get good advice on the internet these days. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Well, thank you for hanging out, brother. I appreciate that. I try to help as much as I can. So, but thank you very much. I just saw Sam ask, is that a 69 or a 71? It is a 72 GMC. Let's see. I lost my place here. There we go. Sovereign saying Jewel Cat. Yeah. No, I agree with it. I mean, it'd be pretty interesting depending on which direction they end up going with it. I mean, hell, it ain't like the LX platform isn't big enough already, right? I mean, it hold all the batteries and electric motors you can jam into that thing. Sovereign saying today's 392 is beyond an old school 426 already. You know, I've said that over and over and over again. I mean, I know a lot of people like to argue the point, but the reality is that there's a reason why they didn't sell that many 426s back in the day. They just weren't that good on the street anyway. And yeah, if you're racing, then yeah, there's certain modifications you make to the Hemi for racing that make it a superior power plant. But I mean, have you ever driven a Hemi car? I've dynoed them before. They're not ultra impressive, 350, 360 horsepower to the rear wheels. They're not going to blow your hair back. They sound amazing. And in the car, they run really well. Keep in mind, these engines are in cars that weigh 3,500, 3,600, 3,700 pounds. So they're not in super heavy cars. They've got a lot of torque. And with a looser converter and an automatic, they're great. With a 4-speed, they drive amazing. That tip-in throttle response is pretty good with any big block. It's just numbed in the Hemi. Now, when you break your foot off into the throttle, fun things happen. But even then, it's not the kind of numbers that you would expect. And I mean, look, if you don't believe me, just go and, again, do a little bit of research. Look up 1971 426 Hemi horsepower number. You'll be surprised at what that number is. Keeping in mind that engine was rated at 426 horsepower with, somebody sounds like somebody said now, with no changes made to the engine, because that was the whole point of that Hemi, is that they weren't going to make any changes for smog. But when they rated it as a net number, the actual net horsepower of that thing was 350. All right, so when they started ranking them in net numbers, that's where that thing fell in line. Some people say, oh, it was underrated for, yes, no, it wasn't. I mean, we've seen it over and over again. Healthy 426 Hemis making 360-ish horsepower to the rear wheels. Not race prep, just street prep. Your regular driving around stock 392 is going to make 400. So 400 is a bigger number than 350, 360, or even 370 if you've got one with exhaust and a little bit of carburetor work. So anyway, that's your 426 V392 right there. That's why I kept saying, that's why I was making those videos early on. Look, the 426 was fantastic, neato, mosquito, whatever. And yes, you can make them modded, make a ton of power. We ain't talking mods here, man. So here's the 392 that makes basically to the rear wheels as much power as a street modded 426, except you can find them in everything. You find them in Challengers, which is the only two-door thing with the Hemi in it, by the way, fun fact. Charger, Jeep, Durango, you can find them in a lot of cars. And so you got that kind of power production to the masses where it just wasn't there before. So anyway, just kind of something to think about. Let's see. Fireman's asking, is it possible to reach 9 bills on 93 pump gas? Yeah, it is. The problem is you're not able to do it with a positive displacement supercharger. I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that, but I'm talking Mustang dyno numbers. I'm talking eddy current dyno, not a dyno jet. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an eddy current. Now, if you're talking dyno jet numbers, can you get to 9 bills on 93 octane? Yeah. PD blower is going to be real hard to get there, though. They generate a lot of heat. They have a lot of inertial drag. The parasitic loss is high on a PD blower. Man, it's going to be tough. You're going to need to have a turbo. The thing with the turbo is that it's going to be, well, quite honestly, a packaging nightmare for some folks. And you got to tune it to get there. And even if you've got enough injector, the weight of the vehicle may dictate that because of the load that you're going to put on it, you can't run the timing that it will take to actually make that 900 horsepower. That timing, if you will, because load also is timing in a way based on dwell time. You might get there in practice, but you're not going to get there on a dyno. So if you have a lighter car, like a Vet, and you've got, you know, just a pissed off 6.2 or 6.0 in that thing, can you get to 900 wheel horsepower with that? With a turbo or a Pro Charger, maybe. You know, I'm pretty sure that 850 shouldn't be too much of a problem there. But it's always pushing it past that next level. You might be able to get it there, but I would not recommend it for very long. Butane, notwithstanding, you know, an actual additive or a race gas mix, it doesn't apply for purposes of this conversation, but I would say that you would need that in addition to your 93 octane to actually get to where you need to be. So, and by the way, you ask a really good question. This is a question that comes up regularly around tuning shops all the time. What's the most I can get out of 93 octane? The most you can get out of 93 octane is stock. And even then, it's not that good. Because the problem is that you're assuming 93 octane in a vacuum, right? Or should I say 93 octane quality as being consistent. The problem is that it's not. In fact, it's not even consistent from week to week. Guys, I've proven that before. Y'all were with me during a Track Chat Live where I'm looking at my data and I'm going, I literally just ran 10 teens last week with the gas that's in the tank of this car with no knock retard issues. And now I've got knock retard issues with the exact fuel that I had in the car. So to that point, if we're talking about super fresh 93 octane right from the tit, goes into the tank, goes straight to the track and make your hits, straight to the dyno in this case, you might be able to get away with something. But a week later, 2 weeks later, when that fuel starts to maybe sour a little bit, because I'm still trying to get to the bottom of why my car was running into and this is not the first time that happened in my car either, this wandering fuel quality issue. Don't know, but I can tell you that it was a real thing and I've got the data to back it up. And I take my car to the drag strip. Like every weekend that I can, I'm at the drag strip. And I love it, but I also do a lot of data acquisition, data logging constantly. And what I'm seeing is, and I'm just at this stage of the game because the tune's pretty much done. I'm just looking at fuel quality, looking at knock sensor voltage, things like that. And you'd be surprised. You'd be real surprised how that fuel quality can waver. So would I try to do it? Nah. No, as a matter of fact, for any of the Mopars, my breakover number is 700. 7 bills, and you got to run butane. 750, 780 plus, you need to make the switch to E85. And even when you make the switch to E85, E85 is a moving target. And by the way, E85 can be more of a moving target than 93 octane gasoline. Ask me how I know. I had a car at Pikes Performance. I wasn't even putting a tune on the car. I was doing like a secondary baseline, and I was actually, in the one I'm thinking about, I was putting a tune on the car, but really all I was doing was pulling timing and making nitrous hits with it. And that thing, I made you could smell, I was like, dude, the fuel doesn't smell right. And that's when I made the hit and knock sensor voltage freaked out. And I went, whoa, I actually thought I blew the thing up. And it was on the 85 car. So again, and that's with timing that's been pulled. I was doing a baseline with the nitrous tune. It wasn't even on the button. So anyway, that gives you an idea, hopefully, where I'm at with that. Sovereign saying the 426 has about as much of a chance as a 440 being released. Correct. Sovereign saying some argue the 440 was technically a better engine than the 426 and it wasn't a Hemi. Actually, there's a lot of people that would agree with that. So when you look at the problem with the 440 is it never really got a fair shake in terms of being a performance engine. It was never designed with that in mind. At least the cylinder heads certainly weren't, because I mean the running joke about the 440, if you ever see a 440 head, it looks like a small block head. Like it looks and performs like a small block. In fact, you got to remember the 440 was rated at 375 horse at 4,700 RPM. It wasn't even a 5,000 RPM. In fact, it was kind of a ways away from it at 4,700. And by the way, that 375, a little bit overrated. Now, they ran good in general. Very torquey, had a lot of tip-in torque though. If you ever get a chance to drive a 440 car, the first thing you're going to notice about it is that the tip-in throttle response, that partial throttle response is right freaking now. It's a lot like the 392 in that respect, maybe even more so. And so that's the reason why so many people loved the 440. It wasn't, and by the way, in a drag race, again, it's 440 gets out in front, and you better have enough real estate for the Hemi to get around it. The Hemi will put about a car length on it, and it will reel it in and go around it in the process, but it's sucking 440 ass all the way down until that point. So, but to give you an idea, the port velocity in a 440, and I'm again, this is just random things that I've read and research that I've done and things like that you just kind of consume yourself with when you're kind of nerd out on these things like I will. Port velocity in a 440 at 4,700 RPM is the same as a Hemi's port velocity. We're talking about intake ports here. Is the same intake port velocity as a Hemi is at 6,200 RPM. Now, that doesn't mean that it's flowing more air. What it means is that the air charge is that fast with a 440 at much lower RPM than the Hemi is. So the cylinder fill is so good with the 440 at those lower RPMs and at those low throttle inputs. It's just that much more responsive, that much more sharp to drive. And again, it's because of how good the 440 was that the 426 wasn't all that popular. It wasn't that the 426, the 800 and whatever dollars back then, that wasn't enough to dissuade people from buying a 426 powered anything. And believe me, if you're buying a 426, you're not buying it because of insurance costs. It doesn't even add up. You're not buying it because you drove something with a 440 and you're like, damn, this thing is nice. So, you know, if you're going to build one for the street, you build a hot rod 440 and you make about 550 horsepower and about 625 pound-feet of torque, seemingly, or at least torque to match. It is so torquey. You don't have to rev it to the moon and you can have a lot of fun with it. Then we'll smoke the tires until you get bored of smoking the tires. Whereas a Hemi, you're winding the thing out. It has this interesting sound to it. It does a lot of neat things, but I mean, the only time a Hemi is fun is when you are in that throttle, and that's, you know, there's a lot of other places to have a lot of fun, and that 440 covers that nut pretty easily. Oh, Sam's saying a legendary Hemi's a 331. It is a good one. Cleaver saying true blunder on Dodge for no 426. Carzilla saying the 440. Sam saying, I I actually see the 440 coming back before the 426, and maybe as far as a truck goes. Say to be a good competitor for the 7.3. Yeah, maybe in a truck, but don't bet on it. You'll see a turbocharged inline 6 before that. The Sovereign saying the 440 was amazing and it was an edge. That is correct. Bobby's saying Racer X brought me here. Hey, cool, man. Thank you very much. I will tell him you said hi. Sovereign saying the thing is, Charger and Challenger are not race cars. They are muscle cars, straight line cars. Mustang, Camaro, see them as sports cars more than muscle. No, they are. I mean, they're pony cars. And that's why the Challenger is done. I mean, Charger notwithstanding, because it's the only American sedan left. It kind of wins by default. But the reason why the Challenger is done so well and the Camaro hasn't is because it does offer up that yin to the Mustang's yang. Camaro can't be more Mustang than Mustang at this point in the game. Mustang's too fast. Mustang makes too much horsepower. But where the Mustang does really well with doing Mustang things, the Challenger does amazing work at being a muscle car. Put you like this, put them both on a drag strip. That Mustang wants nothing to do with a Challenger when both of them have a drag pack. It won't. 392 will stomp a Mustang drag pack for drag pack, stock for stock at the drag strip. Now, from a roll race, completely different story. Mustang has got that wheelhouse on lock, but Challenger's got its act together where it does well. So you can honestly have the best of both worlds in your garage at the same time. That's why I like the Mopar so much the way that it is. Don't Mustang my Mopar. Keep it a muscle car. And if you're going to have a sports car, make a sports car separate from what we've got going on. That is a winning combination, by the way. Size, muscly, torquey, punchy engines. For the guys that don't want to go faster than 100 or 120, which you shouldn't be doing on public roads anyway, that's the car for you. And I mean, they just make a great sound. Lots of cool stuff. It's not a knock on Mustang. Mustang is a riot on the street, and from a punch, those things are rockets. So again, it's a different approach. They're two completely different cars, and I love them both because they are really good, each at what they do best. Sovereign, thank you very much. Saying you should check out Nick's Garage on YouTube. I've seen the show. Steve's saying $5 to the new Dremel. Thank you very much. The new Dremel is actually just on the other side of Sierra back here. I'll try do that intake porting. So let's see. Thank you all very much. And yeah, Nick's Garage is pretty good. The only thing I don't have a problem with it. There's a lot of extra stuff, and I'm kind of like, I just want to get to the nerd part of this. So, but yeah, no, he's got a really cool channel, and I'd love to actually visit that place at some point. I'd nerd out too much though. Let's see. Bear with me just a second. Let me scroll back. Thank you all again, guys. I appreciate it. Oh, hang on. Wow, I blew right past this. Oh, sorry. Yeah, getting back to this. So the 440 was so here's the funny thing. So Dodge actually there was the Poly 318, which was like a semi-Hemi. They had a 4-valve Hemi that was the 901 project, I think is what they called it. It was called a Hemi, but here's the thing. It was a 4-valve Pentastar head that was still called a Hemi. Anyway, homework assignment. Google 4-valve Hemi, and that'll steer you in the right direction. Lots of cool stuff from back in the day. And the interesting thing about it is when you look at it from a modern standpoint, it all kind of looks silly, but you had all kinds of people putting overhead cam stuff together back then. Buick had one. I think they had started to make a twin cam 455. Lots of stuff was in production. It just never made it out. So anyway, I got kind of into that for a little bit, and I've forgotten basically everything about it. Let's see. Let me try to get to some of y'all. Let's see. Muteb's asking, a supercharger or twin turbo for pure quarter mile Gen 3 5.7. You're going to want to go turbo. Probably, I would probably look at a single turbo before I'd look at a twin for a 5.7. There's a lot of options. You got the Wu-Tang Whirly birds, any of the Chinese turbos. Would work fine for that. Depends on what exactly you're going for. If you're going for all-out race, you're going to want to go twins. But I mean, realistically, if you're just out there having fun, want to keep the thing less than about 700 horsepower to the rear wheels, then that'd be the way to go. Sam's saying he's not really into fast. He'd rather have fun slow car than a fast boring car. Check out my video on Sierra. That'll tell you how extremely fun, or I haven't done one in the Camaro, but how much fun a slow, really good sounding truck is. By the way, so and I'm going to apologize in advance, guys, because typically the late night shows are, well, they're shorter because it's late night. And I might not get to everybody either. So if I don't get to you, apologize in advance. I typically don't go past about an hour and a half on the late shows. But what I want to tell you about Sierra. So Sierra, if you haven't seen the video, I do a ride-along video with Sierra. And this truck, the way that it's geared, it's got 410 gears. It's a 400 small block, 441 heads. So they're smog heads, basically. Large chamber heads. It's got a performer manifold with an AVS2 that I don't think is going wide open. It probably is, because AVS2 has some like air things going on. Anyway, I'm going to be making some adjustments to some throttle linkage. That's one of the things that I was doing when I was driving it. But that being said, just watch the video. The thing is a riot, and 4,500 RPM is about the cap for this thing. And wide open, going through the gears, it will basically stop accelerating at about 100 miles an hour. It'll get to 92, and then the rest of the progression is pretty slow because it only revs to about 4,500 RPM. Let me tell you how frightening a 1972 3/4 ton truck is at 95 miles an hour. Not for any other reason than the fact that it is screaming. It sounds amazing. And it's, and I mean, listen, you are engaged in the driving experience the way that you could never possibly imagine being engaged in one of these modern cars. I mean, I'm feeling everything that this truck is doing, and every little wind buffet and because I mean, obviously the aerodynamics are not meant for top speed with this thing. So it's getting buffeted a little bit, the engine's screaming, it's a high torque load, the whole bit, and it is just trucking. I'm telling you, interesting experience to say the least. So lots of fun. This thing will do burnouts all the way through first gear. And again, you just got to look at it, watch the video, and you can hear this thing roasting the tires for a long time. And that's really talking about fun. It's not fast, but damn if it ain't kind of fast. Like, it's faster than some of the Camaros and Mustangs that I remember driving back in the day, like from a dead stop. And I tell you what, from a 30 hit and from a 50 hit, just in terms of mile an hour, because it's just got a 3-speed, hit that throttle at 30 miles an hour and it gets pretty interesting. Hit that throttle at 50 and it gets pretty interesting on that downshift. So she's not exactly slow. She's really strong, if nothing else. And I don't know. It's just a lot of fun. It's a cruiser. It's not a race car. And really, its happy spot is cruising at like 65 or 70 miles an hour. 70 is kind of the far rung on it. Really 65, 68 miles an hour. Just kind of a slow highway cruise is what it likes the most. Nice and smooth, just motors along. But yeah, there's something to be said for having something that just does fun stuff. That's a lot of fun. And that's why what you'll notice is you'll see a lot of guys, to your point, you'll find that a lot of guys will build the race car, right? You build the fast car and you get into it. It's like dating a stripper, right? So it's exciting, interesting things are happening. You're doing things you never thought you'd ever do before. Some things that are kind of making you feel uncomfortable, but you're kind of learning that you like it. Things are moving really fast. You're blowing money like crazy. You've got all these interesting things and stuff that you're being exposed to. But at some point, the party's over. And the issue is that a lot of guys, the vast majority of guys that build these hot rods, they end up getting rid of them for all of those reasons. They've experienced the speed. They now learn that the fear behind having something that's fast is blowing it up, because you find out really quickly that when you blow something up, it's all this money that you've lost to get it put back together or to sell it outright or whatever it is. So that's the big issue is, you know, how long do you stay with that stripper? I mean, how long does that party last? And do you ever really learn your lesson? It's tough to say, but I can tell you that the danger doesn't ever go away with the wondering about blowing the thing up. And here's the other thing. Modern fast stuff is really freaking fast. Like, things don't get interesting with some of these, you know, hyper built cars until about 140 miles an hour. Put you like this. When you go back and watch that video with Sierra, where I'm crossing that bridge, I'm basically, I can't remember if I kept it wide open on that pass or not, but I have kept it wide open to that bridge. And if you notice, there's kind of a slight bend. That's actually, when I do my test hits, this is in Velocito, by the way. That slight bend, I'm wide open with that, with the Hellcat on the slicks and skinnies, and I'm clipping 141, 142. So when in Velocito, this thing is doing like 90. So yeah, there's that to consider, just the difference in speed, by the way. But taking that out of the equation, it's not a lot of fun making hits like that, because number one, you're so insulated in the modern car, and number two, you don't need to be going that fast. I mean, you know, you hit a rock, right, or a critter runs out in front of you, problem, like huge problem. So anyway, you know, Velocito can be dangerous. Summer Nights, I get like the Soul Snatcher at 8.7. Yeah, that'll be commonplace with EVs, believe me. Josh is saying you got a wide body Challenger 392. Is it worth upgrading to Hellcat light intake? The headlight intake. Yeah, absolutely. Hellcat airbox with the Hellcat air filter. I'd go into my playlists, product reviews. I do a video on the filters, and yes, I've always done much better with the Hellcat airbox and the Hellcat filter. Someone saying skateboard AK Rivian. It's him saying a Charger EV be kind of old. My Charger is on the Charger. Yeah, be all right. Sovereign saying with a skateboard platform, you can do a 360 standing in place. Actually, you could. Not only could you do that, you can crab walk it. you could do basically anything you wanted to with it. I mean, it's just crazy. It's you're limited only by your imagination. Cleaver's saying these videos are a great outlet for me. Definitely appreciate the fuel for the fire of racing in cars. Thank you very much, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, 331 is the firepower engine. That is correct. Sam's saying 331 was in the 55 Imperial and in the 300. That's right. They also had the 345 and then the 392 was in 58. And you had the Commando, the Golden Commando 300 and, no, wait, that was a wedge motor, wasn't it? Golden Commando 350 was a wedge motor. And that, by the way, fun fact, was the engine that was shown in the movie Christine. That would have been a 350 cubic inch Golden Commando with the twin 4-barrel option. Mark's checking out. He's got to get to sleep. Peace out. Y'all have a good one. So we're saying firepower still sounds so cool. Very, very much so. Sam, yeah, we've covered that about the 331. Let's see. Oh, Kurt's saying, yeah, in SoCal, 91 is the highest octane pump gas. And that's the other thing. I mean, the question that he's referring to was how much power can you get off of 93 octane? And Kurt's saying, look, who cares about 93 octane in Cali? They've got 91, and I'm feeling your pain, brother. I used to live in San Francisco, and yeah, the exotic blend never really worked out so well for some folks. I never really had a problem with it. I had my Mustang when I lived in NorCal, and I had a blast with it. I never had any problems with fuel quality, but if you wanted to run boosted, some guys did. So, you know. But yeah, you can't make as much, that's for sure. Saying happy 420 to everybody. Happy 420, everybody. Speed Freak's asking, which boostane is the one to use to help 93 octane for better fuel quality? I see 3 of them, boostane, shot, racing, and automotive. I think it's the racing is the one that you get. I don't have it here. I'd show you the bottle. It's the same as the Marine, though. The Marine is the same as the racing. Mustang Lab saying, what's up, B? What's up, Stang? Saying Fiat Hellcats can suck it. Yeah, they could. Sovereign saying, no problem, B. BB saying, sup, fellas? Hey, Mason, should I keep the factory cats on the car or not with the install of long tubes? Well, they won't work with long tubes. You'll have to get aftermarket catalytic converters. And when you do get your aftermarket catalytic converters, get the metal substrate catalytic converters. The ceramic substrate is simply not big enough to flow what you need it to flow. Those things are only about that big around at the biggest. So you need a metal substrate. A 200 cell catalytic converter will be just what the doctor ordered. Gordon saying that old truck does sound good. Yeah, she does. Let's see. Mustang Labs. All I want to know is what you were thinking when your Charger hit the train and started to roll. I was thinking about my shopping list. You need to pick up some broccoli. Cal said, if you stick 2-inch headers on a 392 instead of 1 7/8, will it nullify the gains? No, not really. The problem with a 2-inch header is that you're not really going to be able to take full advantage of it. It will help it to run a little bit better on the big end, but you're going to lose some of the tip-in throttle response that you're going to be gaining with the 1 7/8. It's not that big of a difference, though. Yeah, I would say I'd just run 1 7/8. A little bit easier as far as clearance goes, too. The funny thing is that a lot of folks were talking about 2-inch on the Hellcats, but the thing is that it's really hard to justify when you've got so many guys running mid nines with, I mean, a Hellcat, couple of pulleys, and some E85, and it runs like 940s. It's kind of hard to, and that's on stock manifolds. Hell, man, we got 93 octane with boostane on stock manifolds, stock catalytic converters running 970s. I mean, there's that. 970s and 980s are pretty much cakewalk in a car that'll pass emissions like clockwork. It's pretty fun. Sovereign saying some cars are governed for a reason. Some cars are governed to 140 because the front end. Actually, it doesn't have anything to do with the front end lifting up. It's agreed to. It's like a gentleman's agreement. A lot of the Euro cars are limited to 155, and that's just the speed limit that they're limited to. Other cars are limited because of tire technology. That's usually the thing that gets it first. The manufacturers will use a tire that has a harder compound, and that harder compound is there to achieve certain miles per gallons. You know, it's an efficiency thing. But those tires typically don't have a very high speed rating, and so they're limited just to stick within the parameters of what tires they're running. Some are saying Plymouth Fury. Yep. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, Ken saying, I know you're talking about my Viper. I think it's more fun to drive than my Red Eye. The Red Eye is dangerous. The Viper is fun. No traction control or nannies. The thing is that so this topic came up. Do I miss the Vipers? Do I miss like my 99 ACR? I miss that car. Do I miss my 97? A little bit. Do I miss my 02? Kind of. They're fun in a way. We used to do a lot of track days with those cars. The place out here in Southeast Texas, they at the old Blint base. Goodyear had a Blint base down here, and there was also a small road race track, and we used to hit that quite a bit. But you know, the thing with the Viper is that part of me misses it and part of me doesn't. Sovereign saying, at least in NorCal, I see nothing but 91. Yeah, no, you're not going to see anything but 91 in NorCal. Frederick's saying, what up, Brian? Got the arm flex. I like it. Sovereign saying, I thought that's what the reason was. Thank you for the governor on the topic. Yeah, no, or the topic on the governor. Yeah, no, it's more tired. There isn't a car out there today that, you know, won't comfortably cruise at 100 miles an hour. So, it has nothing to do with that or handling or anything else like that. It's just tire technology. Callis is asking, why do you think the Dodge Stealth was never really a hit? Probably because the 3000 GT was never really a huge hit. It's a DSM car, which is to say Diamond Star Motors. It was a conglomerate or a collaboration with Dodge and Mitsubishi at the time. And I mean, they were good, but they didn't really strike a chord. It was hard to get traditional muscle car guys over into that type of a car. They didn't really understand it. And but if you've ever driven one, they're actually great driving cars. It's a shame that it never was a hit. Multiple Mopars is checking in saying, I'm in. Some are saying, it's a Mitsubishi. It is. Well, guys, that is going to wrap it up. Glad Multiple Mopars just made it in as I'm wrapping it up. It's going to wrap it up for the late show. I got to get out of here because I got to wake up early with the Amish. Hope y'all have a fantastic rest of your week. And with that, love each and every one of y'all. Get your shots. If you're going to send it, don't bend it. Keep her shiny side up. And that's a wrap. Y'all have a good one. Later.